Webinar in cStor's TechWise series. Today's event, Enterprise Scale NetApp HCI, features Ken Jarris, Solution Architect with NetApp, and Peter Schmidt, CTO at cStor. I'm Kim, your organizer for today's event. Before we begin, I'll take a quick moment to point out a few helpful tips to ensure you have a great experience. You have a control panel on the right side. You can minimize or maximize that with the orange arrow. Second, we will take as many questions at the end as time allows. Please post any questions to the questions pane throughout the presentation. And finally, no need to take notes. We are recording today's session. We'll share the recording link with you following the event. So with that, let's get started. I would like to first introduce Pete Schmidt, cStor CTO.
So as we get started here, just introducing us as a whole, cStor and our TechWise series. That's our educational side of the house. There we do things like hosting these webinars and providing relevant information to all of our clients and everybody we can reach out to via this mechanism. So who we are a award-winning provider where we focus really on IT for our clients through best-of-breed technologies. We create and implement end-to-end solutions. We do this with cost-effectiveness in mind. Our competitive advantage that we have over other providers, a lot of that is our people and our strategies. We are flexible and we have an agnostic approach as far as not having a set agenda, right, where we want to listen to our clients, understand the needs, and then prescribe technology to resolve them. And just kind of who we are, we always put our clients first. And then why we exist. We exist to put people on a path to success, and this is our clients, our employees, and our partners. And this is something that we live by day to day. In a lot of the questions that we have, we run it through this filter to figure out what's the right thing to do, so we always do the right thing to put people on a path to success. Our belief is that our minds working together as a team is what is a huge advantage for us. Our innovations and recommendations that we have from the results of our minds working together. We don't just sell hardware, but knowledge, passion, and deliver solutions versus just products. Work harder and smarter, and keep long-lasting relationships with our clients. Then we always innovate in the way we communicate, and this is really how we stand out with our competition. So high level, some of our offerings that we have that we can go through, and we'll have other events and webinars that I'll talk about each of these, but digital transformation, and that's really tied to the cloud for the most part, but it also is just having current technology and implementing current technologies, and if that's the consumption model of the cloud built on premise, or if it's just newer technologies that we want to leverage and bring our clients to current. Digital transformation is something that's ever changing. It existed years ago, but it looked a lot different, and we are changing with technology and with our clients. Cybersecurity, a practice that we have around security, and really taking a data center approach to security, both for data as well as endpoints, firewalls, so on and so forth, networks. So another practice around that. And then converged infrastructure is primarily what we'll be talking about today. And we have several offerings along those lines, depending upon what the real needs are for the client and how it can resolve those in very efficient ways. So our services that we put on top of these range anywhere from cloud assessments. We look at your applications and verify that they can be put in the cloud, and then what's the best cloud for them, to delivery on-premise implementation stuff that we can do through our services. Consulting and optimization. This is not just new stuff going in, but this is looking at what you have and making sure you're using it and getting the best out of it. We have a team dedicated to data migrations, and this is from pretty much any to any. It could be to the cloud, it could be to your data center, it could be to hybrid, it could just be a refresh inside your data center that we need to migrate data between two infrastructures. Managed services that we have, these are all the way to we'll manage your infrastructure and report back to you, and this can be 24/7 type stuff, or it could be just coming in once a week or once a month or once a quarter and verifying everything is the way it should be. And then we do staff augmentation as well, where we can put people on premise with daily activities, be it with a day a week, 2 days a week, or 40 hours. We're our best-in-class technology partners. You see NetApp up there. That's the one that we're working with today in our premier partner list. This is kind of the NASCAR slide. If we truly had a race car, these would be all the little stickers that would be on the sides and on the hood and everything of our race car. But it's kind of who we use from a strategic perspective. We have a bunch of other ones behind these as well that we use to augment solutions and really affect in a positive way what our clients do want to get out of it. So it's just a laundry list. I'm not going to go through all of them. With that, I would like to introduce Ken Jarris to go through some of the details on the NetApp HCI offering. Ken?
Thanks, Pete. Always glad to be here. I'm glad to be back, so appreciate the invite. Here to really get in details or expound a little bit about our HCI offering, which is now shipping. So timing is excellent for this particular option. And let me see if I have control. There we go. A little too much control. Let me go back one. So I think in line with your digital transformation practice, we're seeing the similar thing. The world is changing fundamentally and very quickly. We're seeing new applications, new data services, new business models emerging, and that leads to a lot of new opportunities, both from our perspective and how we can help service customers' needs. In fact, a lot of the conversations I've been having are around where customers are at along this path. I don't necessarily look at the slide. It shows it more as a curve, but I consider it to be more a path. Some customers are more in the modernization of their data center, which is more to the left side of this particular chart. Others are starting to look toward IT as a service. I have those that are trying to modernize. And that might be, modernization might be around either automation of just process, maybe determining process, or even starting to look at how do they update the infrastructure that they're running today, with a goal of moving more down the path toward the right, which is IT as a service. So what we're starting to see is a lot more around the need of different consumption models, different types of flexible consumption models, and that automation is starting to become a key part of that transformation to make it easier to consume the infrastructure and get those new applications up and running in a much more expedient manner than we've seen ever before. Some of that's been from pressure from the external cloud providers. It's at a point where you go fill in a form, give me your credit card number, or sign into your account and validate your credit card number on file, and you have infrastructure in minutes. At the same time, we're also seeing a drive toward data management. Data is becoming more and more prevalent. It's almost like this generation's version of gold. And there's gold in them there hills, was the old saying in the 49er days during the gold rush back then. Now there's gold in that data. We're seeing more and more emphasis around data, around placing it in proper locations that are close to either leveraging it from the cloud perspective or from leveraging it just in a different dynamic than we've seen before. An example of this, one of our longtime customers is a customer that builds pipelines. They do oil delivery pipelines, gas pipelines, those type of things. And a few years back, they started collecting the metrics. They have metrics all along the pipeline to measure the various aspects of the metrics of the environment, the temperature, those type of things, the flow rate in the pipeline, in those aspects. And they're now starting to offer a secondary business around design, to where by leveraging what they have from their metrics that they just started collecting, and this company's been around for many decades, and they just started collecting this type of data in the last few years. They're now starting to leverage that data to help assess and give customers guidance as part of their new business practices around where to place pipelines, so that they can avoid extreme temperatures or temperature swings and environmental conditions such as quakes or those type of aspects of where placing a pipeline can be detrimental because of disruption of service. So those type of things is where we're starting to see data become more and more crucial to the business these days. Application-driven is another aspect I've seen some customers try to describe it as, but the idea behind it is, data is king, and now it's really how do we make the infrastructure being dynamic enough to service that data and be able to place that data where customers need it. To that effect, that really does bring a lot of new challenges to IT. When we look at the different aspects of the IT team, the storage team is being driven to have to store more data, so growing data demands. I've seen a lot of interest in automation. A lot of the conversations I've been having in my role with customers has been around automation of the virtualized environment. We've virtualized pretty much everything we're going to at this point, so that task is pretty well done. Now it's really how do we make this easier to consume, and that's automation. At the same time, if I'm trying to automate infrastructure that is not thinking about being automated, whether that be I have maybe 4 different server vendors, 3 different storage vendors, a couple of switch vendors in my environment, that is a little bit more daunting task, and oftentimes may be perceived as boiling the ocean, as opposed to looking at a different approach of an infrastructure that can be put in place that can be automated from day one. So it's one of those areas where we're starting to see those type of challenges come into play. The virtualization team is seeing deployments, new applications come on board. They're all virtualized. There's not as much bare metal servers these days, and they need to guarantee performance. So we're seeing the need for ensuring that workloads play nice with each other, and that they can guarantee a workload being placed in this type of environment is really getting the service level that they're able to offer to their customers, which is the application owners, and in some cases, or most cases, it's also developers. So we're really trying to make sure those get there. And then the CIO is really trying to drive all this, trying to be the coordinator and seeing that digital transformation is really making the organization more dynamic to the business needs in general, and also specifically to helping lower costs and make the business be able to achieve their goals of growth and bringing new services to their end user customers in a much more expedient manner than we've ever seen before. But before I talk about a little more about what we're bringing to the market, let's take a look about first generation HCI. First generation HCI was really trying to address the fact that our legacy infrastructure stack was too many boxes, too many screens, too many worrying about IOPS and knobs and dials to turn and tweak and tune, too much data overall to manage, just management in general. I would have a management interface for VMware, for example. I'd have a management interface for the switch that I was communicating through. I'd have management interfaces for storage. I'd have it for my backup appliance. And the idea goes on and on, where I was managing from all different aspects of the infrastructure, and I had a lot of different parties to have to coordinate, or I had to go use a lot of different tools in order to try and address the aspects of how to manage this environment. And when we leveraged hard drives, that got into power and cooling, because we had a lot of spinning disks often to drive those IOPS that was needed by the applications at that point. That led to additional consumption of power, cooling, larger data centers, and also then trying to protect all that data, trying to make sure we can recover it, that the business can continue. Business continuity is becoming just as crucial these days, if not more so, as we start to see disruptions around, WannaCry, ransomware invading the space. It used to be, we were more worried about hackers just getting in and taking data or making off with data. And you kind of wish that maybe they pay a little more attention to that over at Equifax. But I digress, and that's more for the cybersecurity space. But the idea, though, is we're really building ourselves out into a legacy stack that HCI saw was ripe for changing, and really being a change in the data center in that respect, and really in disrupting how we were doing things and making people take a look and pay attention otherwise. Now, what it's in theory, and I say in theory because oftentimes the first generation hyper-converged infrastructure solutions didn't always address what they were promising. The idea was this really was to be a software-defined compute and networking storage infrastructure. It would make it easier to manage. It'd be a shared core approach to be a low entry point of cost perspective. It was a pay-as-you-go expansion economics. It was intended to be a one-size-fits-all architecture, and the realities just didn't come to fruition in a lot of cases, and actually I would say in most cases. So the one-size-fits-all architecture didn't quite really work with all workloads. We also saw that the shared core approach brought some penalties to it, and that really led us into where we're at a point to say, look, this needs to change. This is something that this is falling short from what customers are expecting. And that's really around the fact that performance levels weren't being met as being promised. The idea that that shared core infrastructure came with a penalty, because now my processing power is being divided between storage and compute. So I end up having to do trade-offs or look at having to bring in additional modules of an HCI solution to meet those levels. Flexibility was the other key. If I needed just more storage, a lot of cases they were not capable of expanding just to storage modules. I had to bring in a complete offering, which meant additional compute licenses and additional complexity around how to manage this, because oftentimes these particular solutions were not able to be working together. And at the same time, as I came out with new versions of that particular offering, those new versions weren't necessarily able to talk to older versions that I have running in my environment either. The other aspect is around consolidation. The ability to truly consolidate workloads onto this environment was also getting daunting. It oftentimes was bounded by the brick itself that was that building block that the HCI solution was bringing in, and we weren't able to truly collapse our workloads and get that consolidation that perhaps was the expectation of customers when this was coming into market and being looked at as the next nirvana for the way that our generation should be running data centers. So NetApp took a look at this, and what we really have looked at is saying, okay, this can be different. While HCI did accomplish interest and trying to spur that change from doing a legacy infrastructure of different multiple server vendors, multiple storage vendors, different switch vendors in the environment. The idea, though, is that we're really trying to address what the applications are needing today, and that's one of them is around guaranteed performance. So as I'm collapsing those areas, we'll get more detail on this shortly. As I collapse those applications and run on this type of infrastructure, it's now the fact that I can guarantee the service level that they're getting. If you want to take a look at an example or kind of a cloud example of this, you go to AWS or Azure, you're getting a guaranteed performance when you sign up for a certain service tier in each of those services, for example. I don't care what hardware it's running on. I don't care the protocols being used. All I know is I'm going to be getting my server, and I'm guaranteed that this is a minimum level of performance I'll be getting that I can expect from what I'm paying for that server to run. Flexibility and scale. We saw the customers and heard from a lot of our customers that they wanted to be able to scale this type of solution in a manner that made sense for the business. They needed more compute. They can add just the compute nodes. If they needed more storage nodes, they can do so just by adding storage nodes to the chassis. And as we get down to this, I think you'll see we've addressed that very nicely with our offering. The other aspect is around that automation piece. I talked earlier on, a lot of my customers are looking at automation, how to make it easier to consume. When I have 4 different servers, four different storage vendors, trying to deal with different APIs, trying to aspect around, APIs don't necessarily mean the same thing in the sense that I may have to do 4 different types of calls from an API to do the same function around a volume, for example, that I could do with one. Makes it a little tougher. And it's also tougher to maintain and tougher to manage as time goes on, as that infrastructure ages and as I change that out as well. So I'm seeing a lot of automation questions around and conversations start with, how can I maybe start small and maybe start with something new that is more built toward this type of dynamic, show an easy win or show a win for the higher ups and the business itself, and then start to look at how can that expand to the other parts of the infrastructure I may have in place, or decide that I'm going to move more of my newer workloads over to the new infrastructure that can be automated, and then I'll transition my legacy infrastructure over at a different point in time and handle that in a different manner so that I can help the business achieve its goals by being a IT as a service provider that I'm really trying to achieve and march towards. And again, I know you guys are seeing a lot of that with your digital transformation conversation, so that type of conversation fits very well with what I've been seeing as well. So we talk about our HCI, NetApp HCI architecture. It is built on our SolidFire nodes. We have storage nodes, and we also have compute nodes. We are tying this all together with a new NetApp deployment engine that, as you'll see, gets into deployment of this hardware platform in about 40 minutes. We'll talk a little more depth coming up on this, but the idea is now we have the ability to tie this to the cloud with our data fabric services that NetApp's been generating and working on our solution sets toward encompassing the cloud and embracing the cloud is how we can leverage that for customers to where it makes sense for them. At the same time, integration of data services around high availability, ability to do data assurance, so that if I lose a node, I can recover the node in an expedient manner. Also, at the same time, be able to replicate that data for DR and business continuity purposes, and tie that into backup and recovery for third-party services as well. This is built on VMware. We're still finding that they are the largest hypervisor in the marketplace still, so we have partnered with VMware around that aspect. So this current generation is working with VMware. We do have some other hypervisors being discussed, but no, we don't have any open plans yet, timeline for those. But we feel that for most of our customer needs, this is going to be very nice to address what they're looking for from this space. But take a look at the ease of HCI. This is really what we're getting towards. The building blocks are very simple. There's 4 nodes per chassis. This is a sample chassis here. In the back, there are 4 slots. It can be a compute node, can be a storage node, and the minimum configuration is we use 2 of these chassis for HA, and there are 6 nodes that are minimally have to be configured. 4 nodes for storage and 2 nodes for compute. That leaves, and while it's not shown here, in the back of each chassis, typically the way we configure this is there'll be 1 expansion slot open, and you can add additional slots, and I can grow this out as I see fit. I can add, after I get my initial 2 chassis in place, I can add 1 chassis at a time, and I can add those to the all storage nodes, or I can add those to be storage and compute mix based on how I need to grow the environment. On the front side, this is where the disks go. We're leveraging hot swap SSD bays. So as I add storage nodes to the back, then I'll be adding the appropriate SSDs to the front in the appropriate slot location, and I'll be able to expand this out. There's some other notations. We're going to make it easier to take a look at the device and see, are these using encrypted drives? They can also be leveraging the drive size will be on there because the different storage node sizes, it will show shortly, have different SSDs in use. So we're getting different type of capacities based upon the size of the storage nodes you're going to leverage. And to make this easy, we're going to basically introduce, well, small, medium, and large, both on the compute and storage node components. The big difference is around the number of cores, which gives us capability for the number of VMs we can run. Also the memory footprint as well, again, addressing the VMware footprint environment as well. These nodes boot off of an MLC device that's inside the node itself, so we don't have to worry about consuming storage from the SSD disk pool for boot. So those will come up from those environments from there. We're leveraging 10 and 25 gig capable network ports to connect the system to the network for access. And then there are also management ports available as well for monitoring and accessing management. This will be more around leveraging vCenter, and we have the capability to either deploy a new vCenter environment or to connect to an existing vCenter environment as well. So we can integrate with the current environment, or we can stand up a standalone vCenter data center just for this particular environment as well. On the storage side, very similar, small, medium, large. We're going to have a guaranteed number of IOPS for each of these nodes, so the small and medium are rated at 50K IOPS. The big difference is the effective capacity that we're going to get with these drives. The small one will use 480 gig SSDs. There'll be 6 of them. The mediums use 960 gig SSDs, and our large will use the 1.92 terabyte drives. And then that gets us a minimum IOP utilize of 100K for that node. And we're taking a look at guaranteed performance. This is what we're really looking at, that those IOPS that we're providing in the storage nodes, how we're guaranteeing that to the environment and being able to give predictable performance to our applications and provide at the VM level, we can get granular control down to the VM level by using vVols with this particular solution. We're able to consolidate those workloads, leveraging the features that were prevalent in the SolidFire Element OS operating system from the time that we acquired it. The ability to do a min, max, and burst for each of our workloads, and to also dynamically manage those. While we set these through the UI, these are also available through the API. So it gets back to that automation piece, to where it's not just automation around how do I provision and how do I maybe deprovision the objects into the environment. Management and automation can also be around how do I maybe dynamically change or adjust the environment as well. If I see an application in distress, for example, maybe I underestimated the number of IOPS and it's underperforming, and I need to adjust it. Traditionally, what would happen is we get alerts. It may take me an hour to get to that and take a look at that and then either come up with a plan, do some investigation, and maybe 3 or 4 hours later, I might have an answer and an action plan to deal with. Instead, what we can leverage with the API on this is I can actually leverage the ability to monitor those performance metrics, determine how much capacity I've left, how much performance IOPS I have left to allocate, and I can make dynamic decisions as to adjusting these parameters as I see fit in the environment. So my action can be a proactive approach to this as opposed to a reactive approach, which can take long to resolve and can be sometimes detrimental to the application itself and its performance. So the idea is now I can define and enforce these. I can dynamically adjust them if need be, and I can bring consolidation, which brings me density, and I can reduce the footprint of my data center, which I've had some customers when I've talked to, when they start to look at this, they start to see that this reduced footprint now gives the ability where they can decide maybe they don't need to be in the facilities business any longer either. They can decide, can they eliminate their data center and really go to a colo model, because now they have a footprint that's smaller, power efficient, cooling efficient, and with the speed efficient, I can actually run more workloads on it than the traditional version that they may have seen with the first generation HCI, where those cores are being shared. And I have that performance trade-off. So we don't see that penalty because now my storage and my compute are having their own dedicated processors for that purpose. This really gets back to around those noisy neighbors. So we have an application having too small of an initial allocation. I can actually change that guarantee dynamically. I can change it programmatically as well. And I can actually turn that into a guaranteed performance minimum that is effective and gives me the ability to provide overall utilization, because now that application can handle more workload. So I have the ability to make this more adjustable in the environment. And I've had some customers say, okay, why guarantee storage performance? This really gets down to around that mixed workload. We oftentimes, while we wish our crystal balls were accurate, I really wish my crystal ball was accurate, but it wasn't doing so, since it didn't give me those winning lottery numbers when Powerball was what, $500 million a few months ago. So I haven't come to rely on my crystal ball as being entirely accurate. And oftentimes this comes true with when we look at database workloads, even VM workloads. Oftentimes we ask, what's your workload look like? Oh, I don't know. Here's a chart. And it may be some metric chart that from the server environment, maybe some metric from, for example, from vCenter showing what their VM consumptions are. But they really don't know what's going on inside that VM and what's going on within, and what, when the database guy or if they're farming it off to a team of people that are writing queries against the database for analytics, when they're going to release the query from where, to the point that it overtakes our system. And it wasn't expected because we didn't know what was going to happen. We have to be able to react to it, but we at the same time want to be able to be dynamic to that. And that's really what we get into, is these runaway workloads and being able to really ensure that those get isolated and making sure that all our applications are getting service in spite of that runaway workload. The other tenet around HCI has been around, that flexibility and scale. the ability of how we can grow this up, how we can grow out, and more importantly, how I can grow this as I need to for how my environment grows, as opposed to how the current generation is making me grow that environment. Also, at the same time, is how do I grow this with new technology? We know that technology hasn't changed, isn't static. It's going to be changing all the time. It seems that no sooner do you buy a new version of a laptop or a new version of a server, you've got another one around the corner that's just faster and even better. So at some point you have to figure out, okay, how do I make optimize and protect my existing investments, but also be able to leverage what's going to be coming down the pike from the hardware vendors that make it even better and faster for me to consume things. At the same time, I want to be able to grow. I just need to grow storage. I don't want to have to grow the entire environment. And more importantly, I don't want to have to pay for those licenses because I have to grow both sides when doing this. So we've addressed this very simply. Grow as demand, grow as needed. I can add single nodes to this, and I can continually grow this out. We are capable of growing this environment out to 40 nodes. So I can actually expand this upward and outward in growing the storage cluster and growing the compute nodes as I see fit. I can also, as we bring in new generation hardware, we will be able to integrate those to the existing environment. So we'll be able to join the existing storage cluster, for example. So I won't have to worry about, oh, do I have to start a whole new environment for this? And I can't have and leverage compute and the storage power capability of efficiencies and the dynamics that the storage cluster environment has with this particular offering. So ElementOS has the ability for me to scale out nodes, be able to add nodes in, and be able to get the global efficiencies around dedupe and compression as I add those nodes effectively. So I can leverage that, and I don't have to worry about doing a complete forklift move with a new generation of hardware as we introduce that as well. So we see this ability to scale by node. If I want to add compute with a hypervisor, I'll add the appropriate memory and CPU to my pool. That's my compute power. If I want to add just another compute node because that's what I need, and I'm fine on storage, I can do that just as well. Instead, if I want to add another chassis and add more compute, feel free to do so. If I want to add out additional storage, I can do that as well as I see fit, one node at a time. The other thing about this is we can also expand or connect those storage containers out into other parts of the environment, outside of the HCI environment. It's not constrained or restricted to be just used by the compute nodes that are running in the HCI chassis. So we can have and leverage this particular model to add storage to, say, an OpenStack environment or a KVM environment or other VMware environments that we're running with that are not running on the compute nodes in the HCI environment. So we have complete capability to expand out this and offer this as storage capacity to other environments as well, and give us ability to expand our solution to be more than just an ROI for a virtualized environment running VMware on top of it. I can leverage this to be additional storage for other environments as well. We talked a little about that HCI tax. There's two aspects of this. This is a little around the fact that the shared core aspect was being promoted as this is a cost saving. This is a way to help make things simpler. At the same time, what had happened is that we end up realizing that this was now a penalty. We have a storage controller that is competing with the hypervisor, the compute side, for resources. So what we saw from this was we either had to buy larger memory configurations and larger cores than we needed because we needed to address that. So that led into increased costs for this environment as we saw fit. We might have started small, but as we may have put more workloads on this, we saw that shared core environment was starting to really penalize, and I was all of a sudden taxed with a higher cost of having to maybe move up a model that I didn't want to do at this point in time. If we wanted to do deduplication, wanted to do compression, wanted to do file services, we had to add memory to accommodate those in these first generation configurations. So instead, by doing this from a shared core environment, our particular offering is offering core specific to compute, core specific to storage. So we're eliminating that HCI tax of having to worry about I need the power on the compute side, so I can start with a large node, but I only need a small amount of capacity. So I want to start with a small storage node, and we can certainly accommodate that. I don't have to over provision the compute side because I'm sharing that compute I'm assuming the core that's using storage. I don't have to over provision that because now I'm actually able to balance that and make sure I'm getting the right load for what I need to meet my needs. The other aspect we get into is VMware's change their licensing. So as I was bringing in those bricks and bringing in compute nodes, that meant I had to have another hypervisor running. And the way they addressed a lot of that was to come up with and leveraging a different hypervisor than the one I might be standardized on. So while I see several customers doing that today, a lot of customers have interest in alternate hypervisors, a lot of them haven't pulled that trigger yet to that degree, or a lot of them are starting to leverage more of their Microsoft licenses and leveraging Hyper-V for that aspect. So you were still looking at, am I still in compliance with my Microsoft licensing or my compliance with my VMware licensing? In this case, again, expand as you need and see fit, and we don't have to worry as much about getting into those hidden costs around those HCI taxes from that aspect. So deploying rapidly is really the key thing. One of the aspects around this, one of the things around HCI has been around simplicity and around simple deployment. We've created this is a new component, NetApp deployment engine. We developed it for HCI. Expectation is we'll start to see this probably move into our other platforms as well, but this is the first one to take advantage of it. The idea is that we can now actually get the system up and running, completely configured, including VMware, including the networking, and including the storage, in about 45 minutes. There is a YouTube video available at the NetApp channel for this that shows you the full details and runs through the example of this, but we're reducing about over 400 inputs to less than 30. And when we're going through these steps, what's really happening is that we're going through each of those steps and we're getting those details so that from rack to stack, we can actually start to deploy these aspects and get them running and configured. And while we move this along, and you probably figure out why the animation isn't right on this, this also includes whether I'm configuring a new vCenter or connecting to an existing vCenter. I also have configuration of the storage side and configuring that along with the vCenter plugin to monitor and manage the storage components all through vCenter. While we're validating these inputs along the way as well, that also ensures that our implementation goes successfully. So, for example, when I needed to supply a DNS server configuration, which VMware requires, so does the storage component. Element uses this as well, but we want to validate that there is actually DNS services running on that server, and more importantly, we also make sure that the domain you've told us we're going to be searching for is that particular DNS server as well. So as you enter those values into the input for DNS, we're going to validate that, yes, there is DNS services running on the server name or IP address you're giving us. And we're also going to ensure that the domain that you've told us is the DNS domain name, we're also able to access that information from the DNS server as well. So we validate that up front and eliminate errors that may occur either from typos or from someone that didn't realize that they missed the memo about DNS server address changed or the DNS name, host name changed from that aspect. Same area around, around the time services. It's the other crucial aspect around both vCenter and around the storage components to keep things in sync. And most importantly, we're validating that there is a time service running when you tell us what the NTP server is as well. There are other validations we do. There's also simplification around setting the admin passwords, setting all those in one screen as opposed to having to go and log into vCenter and set up an admin password. And same with the storage node. We actually do all that up front and make that a lot easier to validate that. So it makes it easier to deploy and get this also then plugged into our Active IQ system to where we can start to provide capacity reports, start to provide utilization reports as all part of our monitoring that we do with our Active IQ capabilities that we've brought to marketplace. I mentioned streamlined management. This is all managed through vCenter. While yes, there is a GUI and there is an API and there are CLIs for the storage component in here, we feel that 95% of those operations that someone's going to manage this environment is going to be working with vCenter. So that includes acknowledging hardware alerts, dealing with storage alerts, and allocation of the storage objects and manipulating those storage objects all from vCenter on a day-to-day basis. I can do those management monitoring. I can do leveraging the storage cluster. When we set this up, it already gets bound into the plugin, so it's already being seen from what we set up in that aspect, so there's no additional post-setup configuration. Again, I mentioned about we can leverage the alerts and acknowledge the alerts from the storage system as well, all through vCenter. So we're making this very easy to manage, and once we use the deployment engine to actually get this set up. I mentioned about Active IQ. This is our phone home capability. Some of our customers, longtime customers, may have known this as auto support. We've renamed this as Active IQ. We're putting a lot more intelligence, machine intelligence behind this. This actually is a blend of what SolidFire was doing before we acquired them, in addition to what we've been doing for a long time at NetApp with our auto support offering. And now we're providing this as a capability to do not just the monitoring, but also then capacity forecasting and other aspects. We'll be introducing Active IQ over the next year or so. The other aspect around this is, again, APIs. Ability to do an API is crucial in this stage. Excuse me. It's also crucial around how we're going to transition, transform from our legacy means into something that is more proactive and dynamic to the business and the business requirements as they go forward. And when we really take a look at what other people means by when they say they have an API, when they say, okay, create a volume, they say, oh yeah, here's the steps to create a volume, and here's a sample script for that. How do I enable dedupe? Oh yeah, here's the sample script for enabling dedupe and compression. And same with if they have a quality of service, here's how you go implement that. They're all typically separate. They're all part of different aspects that I have to configure and deal with. So in essence, a simple thing of creating a volume that is thin provisioned, deduped, and also has a quality of service defined to it. Oftentimes we see that's 8 separate steps with dependencies and often over 190 lines of code. When we talk about having an API, we really mean it. This is actually a sample API call from the Element OS system that is actually creating a volume, setting the quality of service. You see here min IOPS of 550, max at 1,000, and burst at 2,000. And dedupe is enabled globally, so I don't have to worry about enabling dedupe because it's already enabled from that aspect. So I get one step, and I get about 12 lines of code, a few extra if you want to count the brackets for enclosing that. But the idea behind these API calls is they're available to be generated by the system for us, and they can be leveraged as we start to move toward that trend of moving toward IT as a service. Last items we'll wrap up with is around, we talked about the cloud. Pete, I know you guys have, cloud practice and helping customers guide themselves through the cloud. We know you leverage our technologies with that as well, because we really believe customers should be using the cloud, leveraging the cloud where it makes sense for them, and we provide the solution sets to help with that aspect, whether it be around backup recovery, replication to the cloud, running our file services in a software-defined manner, either in the cloud or on the HCI box as well. So to that degree, we are also including, we'll be capable of loading ONTAP Select, which is our file sharing environment for this particular platform. So while HCI platform is a block service, we'll be leveraging NAS file services by leveraging ONTAP Select, which is our software-defined version of ONTAP. So we'll be leveraging the best of both worlds with this particular area. In addition, we will be coming, ONTAP 9.3 is one of the components that's required for this. Element OS 10.1 is the other component, and that'll be releasing in just a couple of weeks. So in a couple of weeks, a little preview of this is we'll be able to actually then step mirror between our HCI offering and ONTAP, and that gives us ability then to leverage an existing ONTAP environment that can be a secondary target for DR capabilities. We'll be able to restore back to HCI for this particular offering. A little further out, and we have to do NDA discussions, a little more details around this, but we will be able to also then, down the road, the roadmap calls for us to be able to do a reverse of this, where I could actually replicate from ONTAP to Element OS and consume that data in Element OS. Details and that would be subject to NDA discussion, so please reach out to your cStor team, and we'll be happy to make those arrangements, come and give you further details. But this is the start of something a little exciting where we're starting to see that ability for us to leverage the operating system and replication engine that customers have known for quite a long number of years and leverage in their environments, and leverage that with our new offerings as well, which means it's also going to get us to the cloud and replicate to the cloud out as well. All right, so let me hit that one real quick. Last aspect is want to leverage your current backup environment? No problem. Veeam, Veritas, Commvault all have reference architectures leveraging this platform because it's all built on Element OS. Because we've already been doing that integration with these backup products even prior to us acquiring SolidFire. They've been doing that work with them. We're already there from that aspect, so it doesn't have to worry about, oh, does this work with these platforms because it's new. New platform, Element is an operating system that's been around for a number of years, so it's something that is not brand new to the marketplace. It's just a new package, a new solution set that addresses specific business needs. So with that, our use cases pretty much across the cloud, across the edge. The data center, we can leverage edge cases using these in dynamic remote cases. We can leverage web infrastructures, databases, and user computing. Also workflow consolidation, whether it be in the core, on the edge, or in the cloud. We can certainly address all of that with HCI and the solution sets that we're providing. Pete, I know this fits very nicely with your digital transformation practice, as that's helping customers with a vision, how to get there, and then we come in with the technology that you guys leverage to make that vision a reality. And we think the HCI is now a exciting and dynamic version of helping with that particular vision as well.
Before we get to the Q&A, I just want to say a couple of things, if you don't mind. One thing, this letting the cat out of the bag, right? NetApp, this is not, there's other providers out there that have HCI, right? We've seen them, we've been out there, we see them out there, but there's a couple of things that I think are quite unique that you covered in here that I see as differentiators out there. One of them is guaranteed performance, right? Now we can consolidate workloads without the worries. And what we've seen with some of the other HCI offerings is they tend to get silos, right? They'll do it on a per application basis or a per something basis, and you have multiple out there. And this is one where we're inviting everybody to play in the same environment and the same pool of hardware and software, and then we can put guaranteed performance around all those different workloads playing together. So I see that as being one major differentiator. And the other major differentiator I want to bring to note is the enterprise storage within HCI. I think some of the others seem to have a bit of a compromise on storage, right, where it's what they put together to offer their HCI solution versus the NetApp HCI is built off of an enterprise storage solution that is offered within as well as external. You can leverage this from external applications, and it's this centralized storage as well as your HCI. So just high level, those are two things that I see as major differentiators with the NetApp HCI offering versus a lot of the other offerings that are out there.
Agreed. Yeah, I appreciate you seeing that as well, and that's that's resonating. So that's very encouraging. So we look forward to conversations with the customers around this and how we can help. So happy to get deeper with this with your customers, and feel free to let us know how we can help.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen.
Perfect. And then, Kim, if you can help out with the Q&A. Exactly.
Absolutely. We do have a couple of questions. We're running a bit long, but we'll sneak these in. First question, what version of VMware's vSphere is installed by the NetApp deployment engine?
Yeah, so initially we're going to be shipping 6.0 U1, or excuse me, U3, the most recent updated version of 6.0. That will come on board and be deployed as part of the offering. We will be updating the 6.5 update 1. Timeline for that is in early part of 2018, so we'll be seeing that shortly, but we felt that the current Gen -1 was the ideal starting point for stability purposes so that we could get this to market. So a lot of our customers are leveraging either that environment today or they're going from a 5.5 to a 6.5 environment. So the planning of this is appropriate for either addressing customers who are running 6.0 today or are in a planning stages for getting a 6.5. So when we deploy with 6.5 and certify with that, we should be in the right timeline for that effort as well as customers are moving to that platform.
Excellent, thank you. One other question, are VMware licenses included?
What we provide is a eval license, so you can actually stand this up and work off a 60-day eval license with VMware out of the box. You do need to bring your own licenses, and cStor being a reseller of VMware, they can certainly ensure that you have the proper licenses. If you tie this into an existing vCenter, we will leverage the licenses you have available from there. If you need more, then cStor again can help you with those additional licenses you may need for your vCenter environment as you bring this in.
Great, thank you, Ken.
We are here to help.
Yeah, awesome. One more quick question. It's a little bit longer one, but I'll shorten it a bit. Since this is a new offering, is there any concern for considering a 1.0 version product? Ken, thoughts?
Yeah, so this has been an interesting conversation because this is new from NetApp. It's a first generation of a HCI offering. However, when you look at the components, what's really new is the hardware packaging. So the Element OS, the operating system from SolidFire, is really, that's been around for over 5 years. Actually, I think it's been a little bit longer, but 5 years is a robust operating system from that aspect. A lot of customer success is running it, and it has been leveraged highly in a lot of customers' successes today. So that's not new. When you look at VMware, same thing. This is my 13th year at NetApp. I started working with VMware 4.0 when I started here. I worked with VMware prior to that, joining NetApp. So, when you look at VMware being around for well over 13 years that I've been dealing with it in my career, again, proven technology. So the newness is around the hardware components, and they're all covered by warranty and covered by service agreements with NetApp. So it'd be no different than when we come out with, say, new controller models for ONTAP boxes, or we come up with new disk shelves. We come up with new component, same thing on the SolidFire and even our E-Series platforms. It's really the hardware wrapper that's new. So I think customers that are kind of thinking this as a new 1.0 release, if you look at the components, it's really a proven generation on a package that is bringing simplicity and addressing the marketplace from what a lot of customers have been requesting, and now it gives them another option in how to leverage our technologies in a different packaging model. So I think it's a beyond a 1.0 approach from that aspect, and just look at the 1.0 as being that's the hardware component that you're leveraging today.
Great, that helps. Thanks so much, Ken, and to Pete as well. That concludes the Q&A portion, and again, we're running a little bit long, but before we let you go for today, I will pass it back to Peter Schmidt for a few closing thoughts.
We'll wrap this up pretty quick here. So we have an avenue here that we have monthly news and events that you guys can join. If you want to write this down real quick, otherwise this will be sent out in a recorded format that you can skip to this slide to get some more information on how to opt in for this. We also have some upcoming events. Depending upon your physical location. Over in New Mexico, we have a Technology and Education Conference in November, coming up in a couple of weeks. And then in December the 11th, we have in Nevada the Digital Government Summit. And then on the 14th, we have the Star Wars in both Phoenix, Tucson, Las Vegas, and Albuquerque. So across all of our areas over there, lots of fun stuff coming up. So please join us for these events. And with that, I want to thank everybody on behalf of Kim and Ken and all that have participated here. Appreciate your time. Sorry for going a little bit long, but we appreciate you. And hopefully this will come back around and you'll be able to utilize NetApp HCI in your environments.
Excellent. Thank you, Pete, and thank you, Ken. That concludes our event for today. Again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on or at a future cStor event very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.